That was the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, I think we should, because we don't want them.
Okay, so I'll let her know that we do want a closed session on.
Yeah. Liz, say hi. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, okay. How is that?
Who gave that to you?
I don't know, but you better watch out. All right, I'm going to call. I'm going to call the regular Moab City Council meeting to order. If I could have you settle down out there in the audience, that would be great. All right. The Moab City Council meeting, October 10th, 2023. I'm calling that meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask Caitlin Myers to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Caitlin. First item on the agenda is public comments, which is limited to 3 minutes per person. This is your opportunity to speak and give the council any comments that you might have on items that are not on the agenda, and also for any items that are on the agenda. So do we have anybody willing to come up and make some comments tonight? All right, I'll close that portion of the agenda. Next up, we have Andy. And Liz, are you going to be included in Andy's presentation, or are you just going to let Andy do it? I guess it's going to be you, Andy.
That's good.
I did say something to you, but that's okay. Nothing, it was all taken care of. So Andy's going to give us an update on EMS. I know you guys have been working hard this year, and we're really looking forward to hearing all that you've been up to.
Thanks, Mayor. Let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. There we go. Yeah. Maybe. I'm sorry. Should just be able to share it, right? No, I'm okay to lose my notes. It should show up.
Yeah.
Oh, there it goes. There
Yep.
was a delay. I apologize. Thank you.
Happens
Thanks.
to me.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and city council members. I appreciate you allowing me to come and just kind of share a little bit. I usually try to stop into the municipalities we serve once a year. I don't think I've been in the city for almost 2, so I do apologize for that. But just kind of wanted to come and give a quick update on what EMS has been up to and kind of what we do. So we're a special service district founded under Utah Administrative Code Title 17B. So that district was formed by the county in 2018, and the current district board members are up on the board there, but it's Evan Clapper, Jason Taylor, Ronnie Darasari, Elizabeth Tubbs, Jim Webster, Lionel Weeks, and Taryn Kay. They make up the board members for our district, and they have the responsibility of managing the license, well, hiring the person that manages the licensed grand ambulance service for this area. And in Utah, things are a little different than some other states. Ambulance licensure is actually proprietary and geographical, meaning the state manages that. So they decide who is licensed in certain geographical areas, and no one else can really come in and do that unless a municipality chooses to go out to bid or chooses they don't like the service they're receiving. So those are kind of the options there. So our mission statement is up there. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but our vision statement, which is something that's new to our organization this year, really kind of captures what we do at EMS, and really it's about our staff and taking care of our staff so that they can take care of you folks. And so our vision is to create and maintain a best of its kind organizational culture that recognizes and embraces the uniqueness of individuals, invest in our employees' personal and professional growth, provides emotional wellness, compassion, and care to those that serve others, is a leader in pre-hospital and out-of-hospital and backcountry patient care, while embracing this outdoor adventure lifestyle of Grand County, Utah. And I don't always appreciate that last part of that, as I'm sure you guys don't, because a lot of times that means more of a transient workforce or a transient labor force. Us at EMS realize that's the reality, and our mission is to create a system that supports and works within those parameters. So, and I'll just do a little bit of operational, and most of this is based on 22 because we don't have 23 data fully formed, of course, as it's only October 10th. It's coming fast, but I'm glad it's not quite the end of the year yet. But just so everybody knows how we're structured, so our organization every day has 2 full-time ambulances on it, along with a full-time shift supervisor, we call them captains. And then we also staff a 3rd ambulance during busy times. So about 6 months of the year, we have a 3rd ambulance that also is staffed, but typically it's 2 and then a captain, a supervisor. So frequently, if you see an ambulance call, you'll see currently it's a little 4Runner that runs with the ambulance, and that's the captain who shows up to just help organize anything or get there quicker than the ambulance can get there to start care, or those sort of things. So they just kind of manage those and organize the shift. So that's kind of how our department is structured every day. That's kind of what happens. That equates minimum staffing of 5 people, 24/7, 365 days a year, up to 7 people if we have our 3rd ambulance on. And just kind of an overview of our call volume. So in 2022, we responded to a total of 1,649 calls for service. It's quite a bit, as you'll see in our next slide. And so we have kind of this, what we've seen over the years is essentially a 42% increase since I've been here. So from about 2012 to now, it's almost 50%, but it was 42% in the last 10 years. We did have a slight drop last year between 21 and 22. We saw a small 2% decrease in call volume. We're actually on that same track now. So from 22 to 23, we're seeing about a 2% decrease in call volume. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We had, of course, as we refer to, 2019 was the last normal year. And so as we compare things to 19, it's quite a bit of an increase if you compare it to 19. But we've had this 20 and 21 year that were pretty fluxed quite a bit with the COVID and everything else that was happening. So in the last 4 years, just kind of looking at our stats, we've set monthly records in 22 for 4 months. And in 23, we set 2 monthly records. Whoops, I clicked too many times. But anyways, so in the last 2 years, we've set call volume monthly records, 6 months in the last 2 years. And that seems to happen every year. We usually set at least 2 new monthly records of call volume. And that puts a lot of tax on the service. When you're talking about responding to 10 or 11 calls a day, 3 ambulances can't handle that. And so our administration is frequently out running calls and trying to fill in the gaps where we can. So something I think is really important is this, how often do we still respond to locals? I know I heard this concern from the county at some point in the last year, but a lot of people think we probably mostly serve the tourist population of Moab, and that's not the case. 61% of our calls, at least in 22, it's on track to be about 59% in 23, but it's been pretty steady for the last many, many years. It's about between 55 and 60% local calls. So last year it was 61, and that is due to a lot of reasons. Although our local population isn't growing, it is growing in age. And so the age of our population has a significant change on that number. And also just the general health of our population has a change on that number as well. Just kind of some GWIS information. Most of our calls are standard medical calls that we go on. That's the blue, and somehow this side got cut off, but that's the blue there that on that chart. And so those are just medical calls. That's ground level falls, things like that, difficulty breathing, chest pains, kind of your standard things. And then 34% of our calls are traumas or larger kind of incidents like that. And then we have a weird unknown 1%. We do go on people that we find that we have no idea why they're unconscious or what happened. So we do have a section of calls that we do respond to, which we don't know the etiology of the issue. So these are our top 10 patients complaints for 2022. Abdominal pains, number 1. That's pretty common. Alcohol use is high up there. And that's something that a lot of EMS services deal with. And also along with our local police force, we respond a lot to alcohol use calls. And I know Chief's in the back there. We work really well with your guys' police force and have a great relationship. And I really appreciate working with your officers. And we deal with some interesting calls that are a mix of who knows what's actually going on and trying to help these folks navigate what services they actually need. And the police department does a good job with that. So these are our top 10 complaints there. And then just calls by type. So we do some law enforcement assist, emergency interfacility transports, things like that. 911 response is the majority of what we do. That's about 80%. The rest of it is interfacility transports, law enforcement assists, other assists, just kind of your general things. And so while I don't have, this is a really interesting map, but this is the dots of all the calls in 22 that are in the valley. And the dots actually, the colors and everything, they correspond to actual numbers. So if like you zoomed in the Slick Rock area, you see there's a yellow dot right at the Slick Rock bike trail. If I had the GIS data up here, I could scroll over that yellow dot and it would pull up 18 or 20, I can't remember what the number is, calls that were all in that area. So the dot doesn't necessarily mean one call. The color and the darkness corresponds to the numbers of calls. But so I don't have the GIS data up. I think I had it when I presented it to the board and was able to kind of scroll in and show them. But if I was to scroll in right now, the darkest dot in Moab is over the jail. We go to the jail a lot and assist with medical issues there. Just some of the things that we were able to accomplish in 2022. And this is why I like to do these presentations. This is why we have a service here. We know there's 15 people in 2022 who would not be alive today without our team's definitive work, without their interventions. I believe that number is a lot higher. I just can't prove it. And so that's why I'm still doing this job. And that's why our staff do this job, is so that they can help save lives. And it's not always saving lives. Sometimes it's just making somebody's day a little better if you can. But we are aware of 15 people who directly would not be walking today, would not be alive to see their loved ones without our staff. That's pretty awesome. And I'm sure there's organizations here in the county, city police, and the sheriff's office. They all play roles in that, whether it's early CPR, early defibrillation, some of the things that they do that can really help save a life. So just the other thing I'll probably touch on there is we transported 6 patients on ventilators. This year we have a critical care paramedic program where we're able to transport high acuity patients out of our hospital to larger hospitals. And so ventilated patients are usually pretty difficult to manage. That's a photo of one happening right there with our crews. You can see it takes 4 people to manage that. A normal call would take 2. And they're on multiple medications, drips, and other things. And that patient right there actually went to St. George. So we transported a ventilator patient 5.5 hours to St. George. So we actually had to stop in Sevier at the hospital there to borrow more medication because we ran out. So luckily they were willing to do that. Some other things that we got done in 22, and I'll just hit a couple of them. I don't know if you guys have heard about this thing that the fire department and us have been doing, this Kids Academy. It's really cool. It's really fun. We get a lot of participation from the community. We get some donations to put it on. The Red Rock Four-Wheelers have donated some funds to do that. Other businesses in town have donated that. This is a photo of the first one. I think there were 26 kids that participated. In the first one, we had a few more than that this year. And the funnest thing they got to do was not our stations are kind of boring, right? It's like bandage a wound, do CPR, but the fire department has the cool toys, right? So they got to try to use the jaws of life to move an egg from one place to another. And all the kids were breaking the egg all over, and it was a lot of fun. And cleanup's easy when you have a fire hose. So, but those were kind of the things that we did this year. And then just kind of what's been going on in 23. We've done a lot more focus on our internal leadership and management, developing our leaders. We have a very young supervisor corps. Most of them, other than one, were promoted internally. And so a lot of them, their only experience has been working for me in Grant County EMS. And I really appreciate that limitations of that for them. And so finding them some outside training and finding them some other people to be mentors and help them out. So we've been really focusing on that this year. We held some planning meetings with our leadership team and the board to set some priorities for the next 12 to 18 months. That's still in process. We're hoping to have that, and I'll make sure I get that out to both Jason and Ronnie, and when we kind of have that document full so that you guys can take a look at that. We had to do a change in our medical billing company this year, which caused a pretty sketchy financial situation for a temporary period of time. But what happens when you change medical billing companies, it usually takes months for insurance companies to catch up. And so we had about a 3 or 4 month lag in income, which caused our savings account to get fairly low, but we've recovered fairly well from that. And so it's been a positive thing to change. It just caused a little panic for a few minutes there, but Ronnie was calm. I was a little panicked. She was good. I think one of the best things that we've been able to accomplish this year is we received a grant to focus on our employee mental health and wellness. And you guys have probably heard about this, but the legislature set aside quite a few dollars last year to focus on first responder mental health. And it's something that us as a department, we had already invested in a little bit. We already had an agreement with some outside mental health folks that our staff could call 24/7 anytime, and tab was picked up by the organization. These funds that we received helped shore that up, and that was Captain Logan Brewer who actually went through that and got those funds for us and then has set up our program. But this fund has helped shore up that program and also provide better services for our staff, as well as we've opened it up. When we applied for the money, we said we're going to open seats for Grand County Search and Rescue, Moab Valley Fire Department, the Moab PD has participated in much of it. And so we're kind of trying to work together to make sure that all first responders are taken care of. And I believe other organizations also have received those grant funds for various things. And so I think with all of us working together, we're doing a much better job of taking care of our staff. You know, it takes around 2,000 hours of training to become a paramedic. And to spend that kind of time and energy to burn out in the first few years because you're stressed and you're scared and you don't know what's going on and you've seen a lot of things that maybe you shouldn't be seeing or most people shouldn't see. It's really stressful for people, and it's kind of a waste of the time and the energy. And so we really feel it's our responsibility to help support them as they go through that and have at least a successful career, or at least be able to leave on terms where they're not frustrated, burnt out, and are leaving with mental health issues. So on that note, it's a stat I use. It's a sad stat, but our staff have been on the scene of 36 deaths this year. Last year, it was a total of 22. So they're seeing a lot more tragedy out there and a lot more things going on. So while call volume might be 2% lower, that speaks nothing to the stress of the calls that are there. It's just a few less, doesn't mean it's any less stressful. And so that's something we're really proud of, and we're going to continue to work on. We have great support from our board for those programs. So, and then I love to use Brett Sherman's photo as he's being interviewed, and KSL asked him a question. He was like, I don't know what to say. And he basically looked like that for about 20 minutes. But yeah, any questions at all for our organization or department?
Questions for Andy, Council?
No, just thank you for all that you do. Now that we don't have to do.
Well, that's why we're here, hopefully to help you out. So
All right, Andy. Oh,
I would-
Caitlin, go ahead.
What's your biggest challenge for recruiting and retaining staff?
yeah, so we've identified a few. First of all, our pay scale, the current pay scale is way out of line with other agencies. There's we've seen Western Colorado really push their wages for paramedics and EMTs, similar to what you guys are seeing in law enforcement as well. And up north as well, we're seeing places like Wasatch County who are growing, pushing their pay really, really high. And so we realize that, and actually are working with the board to make some adjustments this year. The biggest issue, and I don't want to sit here and beat on it again, it's housing. 100%. Our staff can't find places to live, and And, you know, they love working for us. We've heard that. We do the same employee survey every year for the last 3 years, just to kind of track if things are changing. And the top score every time in all of our surveys, what they score the most and what people enjoy is the people they work with and the culture of our organization. They love it. It's unique. It's very unique to anywhere else I've ever worked in other fire departments or other EMS agencies. And it's just a unique place to work and they love it. But of course, their biggest issue is pay and housing.
Ronnie.
I don't want to take up time as a board member, but I do feel like we don't get you here all the time, and sometimes year after year, the questions are the same from the public. So pardon me if you touched on this, but you know, I feel like two of the common questions, and maybe it just helps for education and repetition if you respond to them, that so often come up in the community are like, oh, well, you know, how come they aren't charging people for these calls? So maybe just a little recap on how billing works.
Yeah.
and where the income comes from.
Sure. Yeah. So our agency is basically funded. It's usually been 50-50. This year it'll be a little different. It's 50% patient billing or revenue derived from services we provide. So that's insurance revenue from billing patients for transports or CPR classes or fire standbys or some of these other things that we do to derive revenue. The other 50% is the percentage of the healthcare sales tax that we receive. So that usually provides 100% of our funding between those two sources. Medical billing is interesting, and around 50% of our patients are government payers, Medicaid, Medicare, VA, things like that. They reimburse on their own schedules. It has nothing to do with the state of Utah, who actually regulates ambulance rates for Utah. And so they reimburse on their own schedule. And so I get reimbursed about 29 cents on the dollar for every Medicaid, Medicare. It's actually less for Medicare now because Medicaid, we made a deal with the state to increase ambulance reimbursement by us putting more money in. They can draw more federal dollars down. So I actually pay a Medicaid assessment to them first before they'll pay me more money, but it's kind of an interesting scope. We'll give you 29 cents if you give us 50. Okay, thanks. But that's kind of how it works. And so essentially 50% of our bills are discounted by 75% immediately, because that's just the payer mix. And so, you know, while we might bill $3 million a year, we receive around 1.2 to 1.5. So,
And I think my other question was just, it always helps me as a board member, and I don't know that everybody gets this exposure, but every once in a while we meet and we talk about like the back-to-back calls that people just went on in like the last 3 days. Like maybe you can give it a recent example of how that,
Sure.
that happened.
Yeah. So you're all aware of the plane crash, of course, that happened recently, and the tragedy that was. Right after we transported a victim of that crash, we were paged I-70 for a 7-patient vehicle rollover. And, you know, we had 3 or 4 ambulances out almost 24 hours straight. And so we had that weekend, I totaled it up. We had 42 calls in 3 days. So it was a lot of calls. And that puts a lot of stress on the system simply because we don't have that all year. I can't have staffing at that level all the time. And I also can't predict when 911 calls happen, right? And so we do the best we can with data and information and try to staff busier weekends, historically busier weekends, but it's totally random. I would never think a Sunday night I'd be on a plane crash and then a 7-patient vehicle rollover. And so, you know, it's just, you just don't know. And those systems put a lot of stress on not just our staff, but also administrative staff who pick up the slack, myself, some of our other staff who come in and cover the calls. And so it can be very taxing on our people for sure. Is that kind of what you're, yeah.
And there's why you have the mental health programs.
That's exactly right. Thanks.
So any other questions for Andy? Andy, thank you
Thank
and
you
your
so much.
crew for everything
Sure.
that you guys do for our community. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody here that we're so grateful to have such a great EMS department in
Thank you
our
very much.
community. Thanks.
Man. Thanks.
All right, next on our agenda, department updates. We have no department updates today, so I'll move right to the consent agenda. We have 3 items, 5.1, I knew I wasn't going to be able to say that right. Indigenous Peoples Day, a 2023 proclamation that was read at the event yesterday that was held out here in front of City Hall by Tawny. So thank you, Tawny, for reading that. And we have the approval of the minutes, September 26th, the regular council meeting, and approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $1,113,538.18. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Kalen, second,
Second.
second by Luke. Any discussion, Kalen?
No.
Luke?
Nope.
Any other council members? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. First item of general business is Alexi to talk to you about the Utah Renewable Communities Program Utility Agreement for your consideration. And my understanding is this is just an agreement to allow Moab City to continue working with the Utah Renewable Community folks.
Yeah, that is the effect that this will have for us. The last time we spoke, this was something we were anticipating happening soon. It's taken a little bit longer than predicted. So this is the next step in the process of getting through the Utah Renewable Communities implementation process. And the utility agreement is what we're looking at today. It was reviewed and revised from feedback from the communities that are in the program, including our own council for Moab. It was passed by the board in July. And then after some delay, it was approved by Rocky Mountain Power, and we have an executable agreement at this point, and all 18 member communities are requested to sign the utility agreement in order to continue in the process. So our timeline on this is around November 17th is when they would like to get these back, returned and signed. And then that would go into a program application that Rocky Mountain Power will submit to the Public Service Commission. And once that comes back and is approved, that's when we would start implementing. We would approve an ordinance and then begin with implementing the program. Okay, as a reminder, the utility agreement is required by state code to address some things. So the things that are outlined in here are the consultants. It requires us to cover consultants used by the state of Utah for the program. This is addressed in section 4 of the utility agreement, and it has already been arranged through the agency, and it was already funded through fees paid by the participating communities. So that's up to $200,000 is the maximum amount that's been covered through the payments. And signing the utility agreement does not create additional financial obligation with regards to that. It's already been done. The other thing, number 2, 2 mail notices to customers are required before launch. This goes through the process that would take place to do that. Rocky Mountain Power will issue those, but they will be invoiced to the communities. It's already in the sustainability budget for us to be able to pay for those. So those are also addressed in section 5 of the agreement. Section 7 covers management of unpaid termination fees. This is a specific situation in which during the program's operation, unpaid termination fees would be covered by the program rate. If the program were to dissolve, this covers what would happen if there were some outstanding at the end. What that would eventually do is those termination fees that were unpaid after the program ends, the Public Service Commission would decide on those amounts that would be paid to Rocky Mountain Power based on criteria that they would adopt when it approves the program application. So the mechanism for covering this cost would be in detail in that application and determined by the Public Service Commission. It does not commit our community or the participating 18 local governments who are members of the program to pay those unpaid termination fees. So that's section 7. And then identification of replaced assets in section 9 is the 4th major required thing that this agreement does. So what it's saying essentially is that if the program decided the participating communities wanted to pay down thermal generation plants like natural gas or
other coal plants, things like that, faster than they would normally be paid down because they were purchased on behalf of all of the customers of Rocky Mountain Power. It has to be identified by the agency, and there has to be a process for doing that. At this time, the program is not planning to do that. So it could happen in the future, but they are addressed in Section 9 under replaced assets. Okay, a few things that this utility agreement doesn't do. It doesn't finalize our participation in the program. It is required that we would approve this if we want to continue, but we would have to go forward and adopt the participation ordinance if we wanted to finalize our participation in the program, and that would be available after this goes through the Public Service Commission and so forth. It does not include projected program rates for participating customers. That would be estimated in the program application and then finalized by the Public Service Commission. So that is also not in this agreement. And it doesn't require additional monetary commitment. The parts of this that cost money have either already been accounted for or we are budgeting, but they wouldn't happen until we later adopt the participation ordinance, at which point we would implement like notifications of people that the program's happening and do those pieces of this agreement. So it does not require additional monetary commitment. So signing the utility agreement is a procedural step that we would need to do to continue in the Utah Renewable Communities program. We're looking to decide what we want to do by November 17th. So I wanted to put it to council today for your consideration.
Thanks, Alexi. Questions? Ronnie?
I just had a random one, Alexi, because I try and follow it in the news. Ogden is still part of this, right? I know there was maybe some they were
Currently.
deliberating for a while. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then I was just curious because I know you and Kaylin have probably spent a lot of time with this. And I mean, I read it. I just didn't know, like in the negotiation when it was being put together, was there anything considered, I don't know, contentious? Figure I
Not
probably
from
would've
my
heard about it,
perception.
yeah.
I feel like the things that we wanted to address, Nathan reviewed it and provided
Yeah.
comments, and the other communities did as well.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, there's
Yeah. So you guys were happy with how it turned out. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again for working on it. Yeah. I mean, for the little bit I know, it looked good to me. So,
Thanks, Ronnie.
yeah.
Anybody else?
I mean, I guess I can make a motion.
Okay.
maybe, and people could still say something. I move to approve Community Renewable Energy Program Agreement between the Community Renewable Energy Agency and Rocky Mountain Power.
Motion by Ronnie, second.
Second,
Second by Kaylin. Ronnie, any further discussion? Kaylin?
just that I'm very pleased that we've reached this benchmark, even if it doesn't do much because the Community Renewable Energy Program has the potential to rapidly and affordably help our community meet the renewable energy goals.
Great. Anybody else? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, here we go. We'll wait to hear of the next steps.
today.
Okay. All right, item 6.2, consideration of resolution 25-2023, a resolution of the governing body of the city of Moab declaring certain property owned by the city of Moab as surplus, and I believe Public Works and the police department have some items that they consider surplus. And so Carly, do you have anything to add?
No, we just have to have you declare them as surplus before we can auction them off. So we have no need for them anymore. It's a routine thing we do every once in a while just to do some housekeeping.
You accept a motion?
Yes.
I move to approve resolution 25-2023, resolution of the governing body declaring city property as surplus.
Thank you, Tani. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Luke. Discussion, Tani?
No.
Luke? Anybody else?
I just have a geeky question. Every once in a while you look at the list and you think, wonder what that is. Is there like one official public service surplus site people can go to and look, or is it always different depending on the?
Like, I can't remember our process exactly
Yeah.
for the auction. We
Yeah.
sort of hold. Oh, that's pretty.
Okay, well,
perfect.
anyone interested can go there.
Yeah, you can go get a police cruiser if you want, that can't go over 30 miles per hour, but it's a steal.
It's amazing what's on that website.
Yeah.
Publicsurplus.com.
Christmas is coming. I'm just
All
saying.
right, Ronnie, we
Okay.
expect a gift from you.
Everyone's
from
getting a
Public-
car.
Yeah. All right, I have a motion made by Tani, seconded by Luke. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, next item, 6.3. This is probably the biggest item on our agenda this evening, and that is consideration of a contract award to Kilgore Companies, LeGrand Johnson, for the downtown dispersed parking project. And so basically what you guys need to consider this evening is the contract award and the funding alternatives that you would like to have considered in that contract to make sure that we get everything that we want in the dispersed parking project. So I'm going to turn this over to Chuck. And then David is also available to talk about the financial aspects and the funding alternatives.
Great. Good evening. Thanks, Mayor. We have come a long way to get to this point, and hopefully we're getting closer to awarding a good project. What do you got, buddy?
Mhm, mhm.
There you go.
Recording in progress.
Mute. I remember that. So we've got a PowerPoint that doesn't contain all of the information we'd like to talk about tonight, but it might help guide us through. We'll reference other documents. Some are just too big to put on the PowerPoint. Next slide. Thought we'd start with a little bit about the timeline of the Moab Hotspot Parking Project. And you recall in 2018, there was UDOT Hotspot money was awarded to the Arches region, which we are a portion of as defined by UDOT. And this was money that came from the legislature, was 165 million that was dedicated to go to areas of tourism, essentially, in order to decrease traffic mitigation, enhance recreational opportunities, and provide some economic stimulus. The city applied for those funds as part of the district, and we were awarded money. In 2021, the last version of it, we ended up with 3 projects from the basically $7 million, $8 million that we were awarded. One of them was transit, which we talked about a couple of council meetings ago. The other was Emma Boulevard. That was part of the dispersed parking, but we've segregated that out of the downtown dispersed parking because it's a little bit north. But even though those parking stalls from both the Emma Boulevard project and the downtown project add up to the total number of parking stalls that we're trying to achieve by this project, because at its core, this is a parking project. This is to acquire parking stalls so there's less traffic congestion downtown. And then there's other opportunities that council wanted to take advantage of to put some amenities in here that would enhance the downtown experience. And we've tried to do that with our project, with the design. 2021, 2023, Emma and the downtown parking project design and stakeholder meetings were held. We were at council during those times. We met with the hotspot committees. We met with business owners. We met with residents. Next. And in April, we had the first of this year, we had the first bid opening for the dispersed parking project. And we'll talk at length about budget, but that first bid, we had one bid and it came in at $3 million over budget. And it just was not anywhere near where we could value engineer it down. So we agreed to reject that bid, value engineered it, which is just a way of, taking input from the contractor, subcontractor, as well as a team. We said, okay, here's some things we can think about. And we implemented those, modified the design a little bit, and then we went out again. In the meantime, Emma Boulevard, council had approved it as we presented it. We went out to contract, and Emma Boulevard was completed, I think it was end of May of this year. We continued on the value engineering in order to reduce costs to get it to a more affordable project closer to the approved budget. We were hopeful. Next. And then in September, we had that second dispersed parking bid opening and we had one bidder submit. It was LeGrand Johnson, our local contractor. And it was still over what we were told were the available funds. So we then spent time further value engineering it to reduce the bid cost and present to council because we wanted to get it before you. So we've been through it twice in terms of going back and looking and see if we could find ways to reduce costs while not losing parking stalls, number one, but also keeping as many of the amenities as we could and try and get closer to a budget that, you know, if council thinks it's doable for that budget, it's closer anyway than it was the first time around when we were way over budget. There are some assumptions I wanted to talk about that we used. So I've said it already, but there's no sufficient funding available in the approved budget. And I'd like to go to the spreadsheet now, Mark, and look at that. It's the Excel. There you go. So if you'll bear with, if we start at the top, the total UDOT dispersed parking funding is $5,715,000. The city cost share for Emma Boulevard was $400,000. So in the scheme of things, that's a positive, right? And that was because part of the Emma project was roadway improvements that UDOT was not going to pay for, right? For connectivity purposes, and the city agreed to put that, and we budgeted for it. The city has an amenities contribution, and by that, I mean that council approved $1 million to go towards the amenities last fiscal year, if we could get it done last fiscal year. And my understanding, and David could speak to this more completely, that was carried forward. So the total dispersed parking revenue available for the entire projects, not including transit, okay? Transit was separate, but for the parking on Emma Boulevard and downtown is $7,115,000. So that's the amount of money was available. Now we'll talk about the expenses. The design for downtown and Emma and CSI is Civil Science Inc., who is our consultant engineer, along with landscapers, architects, and electrical engineers. Costs were $534,700 to date. There's some expenses incurred over the last 2 months for doing this value engineering. We've spent scores of hours on this. I won't say it's been hundreds of hours, but we spent a lot of time working with engineers, landscape architects, subcontractors, contractors, and staff, and tried to pull it together in what we thought we could do to try and make this a doable project. But be that as it may, that's $534,700 for design for downtown and Emma. The construction for Emma totaled, and that project is completed and closed out, at $941,000. So that leaves us with a total dispersed parking commitments expenditures to date, right? So we've done work using those hotspot funds of $1,475,935. If you take that number and subtract it from the $7,115,000, you should get $5,639,065, which is the budget left over for the downtown parking revenue minus expenditures. So I know that was one of the questions some of the council members had. Could you help us go through the budget and explain what we've had? So this was our effort to do so there. Okay, Mark, and if you go back, please, thank you. So with that in mind, the approved budget, which was 5.6 million, we'll just call that for conversation right now. We had a base bid in the amount of $7,471,000 and change. That doesn't meet that budget of 5.6 million. We had also put in the last few weeks as we were bidding it, we had a contractor come to us with a vendor who had some alternative items, they thought they could save us some money on the street lighting elements. So we bid that as an alternative bid. And it saves about $275,000 if we awarded the alternative bid. They look similar. They have similar characteristics, not the exact same thing. Our engineer and electrical engineer and landscape architect think they would suffice. I think we do too, staff. But that being said, neither one of those is enough to get us down to the 5.6 million. Approximately 2.4 million of this bid was for amenities such as landscaping and streetscape aesthetic improvements. If you'll recall, UDOT will let us spend 6% of the hotspot money for amenities. Their normal project is 3%, but we negotiated them to 6%, but then they said that was a hard cap at that point, which is about $435,000. So, and since council had earlier agreed that they would kick in $1 million for amenities, that gave us a budget of $1,435,000 for amenities. Out of the 2.4 million, that leaves a shortfall of approximately $1 million for landscaping. And I just thought that was of interest to let you know that why some of the reasons these costs come in. The other reasons these costs come in so high is it's post-pandemic. And there's just every project we have. We had one the other month that came in under budget. But besides that, every other project comes in. And the ramifications aren't that. I'm not blaming the virus for this, but there's a lot of money out there that everyone's going for. State, local governments, infrastructure money, Build America Better money, ARPA money. So those are being infused in the economy. And there's not a lot of construction companies growing with experienced people. I mean, it's expensive. So we're having to compete to bring contractors in. There just isn't a big local contractor base to do these kinds of projects. And in fact, on the contract we're talking about, LeGrand Johnson will be the prime and do a lot of the work, but not all the work, not even most of the work. But we'll have a landscape architectural firms from St. George, concrete company from Price, and potentially the electrical company will come out of Salt Lake City or some suburb of Salt Lake City. So we have to import in. And when those companies come, there's not just mobilization costs, there's per diem and lodging that gets tacked onto their costs, as well as paying their laborers and operators. Next. We also assume for our purposes to get to this point that rebidding the same project a third time with these plans will not result in a lower contract bid for the reasons I've just outlined. We've gone at it the first time, we went back and value engineered it, which means look at things really tight to see if we could save money and still achieve the goals of the project. And we're still over budget. Mark and I were talking today, we're building a project not to the budget, but a project of what we want. And then we've got the outside money to kick in, and we have to decide, council can decide if they want to kick in more money or lower the scope. But the point of this is that putting the exact same set of plans out again, we won't get lower bids. I'm 100% sure of that. And it's been value engineered between 1 and 2. So the alternatives in our mind, in our team's mind, were these. Award the alternative bid because that saves us $275,000, almost $300,000. And also identify project scope modifications to reduce costs while maintaining the 188 parking stalls required by the UDOT cooperative agreement. And that alternative is the one that we recommended in the agenda summary. Just you have that one. We've given you that information. We could do scope modifications to produce a less comprehensive project and then rebid it. If we don't get close to the 188 stalls, UDOT will have a problem. But by less comprehensive, we could, look at the landscaping, we could look at other aesthetics and try and go out to bid it again. I'm not sure we can. We could probably maintain the stalls, but that 2.4 million would be our first place to look for money. Or we could utilize additional alternative funding sources to fully fund the project as bid or revised. And by revised, that's the alternative I was talking about above. But for whatever contract amount is agreed upon by council, a minimum of 3% should be added for public involvement, because we know that we want public involvement. And this is going to be a high touch project in the downtown with businesses and residents, and 6% should be added for consultant construction administration, because someone's going to have to be on the job full time. And we have one construction inspector who's on 4 different jobs right now, and it's difficult at best. So we need to, we think this is, again, a high touch project downtown. And then 10% should be added for potential change orders. Change orders are a reality of life in any construction project. For what it's worth, UDOT budgets 20% for their change orders. In my time here, we've been able to keep it around 10% on most projects, some less, some a touch more. I think that's a reasonable number. The good thing about the 10% is if we only use 5%, that's money we don't spend, right? But I think that's a reasonable number, because we're going to have to encounter subsurface utilities, which is, to quote the Beatles, part of the magical mystery tour of doing construction projects in Moab. Next, please. So what does this look like, the project cost alternatives? So I'll take a second to explain the spreadsheet before I dive into the numbers. So their existing budget, we've got in the green, the $5.6 million. You saw where that came from. Then we did alternative 1 is the base bid. So that's what the contract, that's what we went out to bid for, and that's what the contractor submitted the bids for. In blue is bid alternate, which was the street light modifications. And then item number 3 was the third alternate, which was bid the alternate to lower that approximate 300 grand. We would then award the bid. If council elected to go that route, you award the bid. We already have a written proposal from the contractor that would reduce the cost about 25%, which is the most you can really down change order without having to rebid the project. So we've maximized that. So now to talk about those, if we look at now as we go down the rows, the potential initial construction cost of the base bid was $7,470,000, the bid alternate $7.2 million, and the bid alternate with change ordering down 25%. And I'll explain in a minute what I mean by those. Is about, we bring it down to $5.5 million. Then there's the money for construction administration, money for public involvement, money for potential change orders. The costs after project completion under bid alternate 3 would be $6.7 million, which leaves a budget shortfall of $1 million and $1,044,000. So that's after kicking in the $1 million in the original budget that I described. So that's an additional amount of money if council elects to go that way that would need to be dedicated to the project. So we'll come back to next, Mark. So I just wanted to explain it, let you see it in, we looked at things and we're not suggesting any one of them. David's and Carly are more qualified to make recommendations on it, but we've all talked. There's the potential for a bond or to withdraw from reserves are the 2 first examples of where the additional money could come from. That would allow the project to be built. It'd end up bonding or coming up from reserve funds about $3.4 million. Next. Alternative 2, which was the bid alternate, going through the same process, come up with a bond or revenue reserve funds would be approximately $3.2 million necessary. And alternative 3, accept the alternate bid. After the award, reduce the project scope through a deductive change order, which we've already worked through with the contractor and the engineers and landscape architects to come up with what we think makes the most sense. And I'll show you in a minute what that would be. So you can see a map of it. I've sent it to you, but this results in a potential final project cost of $6.7 million. And yeah, the items to be reduced are delete the raised stone item, which I'll show you in a minute, and replace with 2 to 3 inch red rock mulch on the ground. And what that does is it doesn't leave any bare dirt. You know, the red rock mulch at least is better, our team feels, than just dirt out there now. And then if additional money were to come through some point in the future with grant money or windfalls that council wanted to go back and put the raised stone in, we could. And then now let's go to the exhibit marked with the red and circles, please. Time for a map. I know there's been a lot of numbers. It's this guy. Oh yeah. There you go. Yeah, so if you could maybe zoom. Yeah, these things are just big files. They just take a while to load up. Yeah, hopefully it won't crash. But I put this exhibit in the agenda packet without the yellow box there. We just added that to make it a little more clear if it wasn't clear to you before. But the yellow box is, so there were 11 blocks that dispersed parking treatments would be done with. And in order to get the 25% deduction, we went into 5 streets, which we consider to be outliers from the downtown, central core of downtown. So that left in as the central core 6 streets, which are Center Street, east of Main Street, Center Street, west of Main Street, 100 North, east and west of Main Street, and then what we did is we went into 200 North, 2 blocks of 100 South, 100 East south of Center Street, and 200 South, and said, what we want to put in now is the hardscape. So in other words, the bulb outs, and we can certainly look at plans if you'd like in a minute. The bulb outs and everything, and set the stage so that we have parking stalls. And then if we wanted to go back later and put in the street lights and the landscaping, we could do so. Yeah, that's good, Mark. Just let it go. That's perfect. Yeah, you got it back. So that's, again, within the yellow box, it's as bid, gets all the full landscape treatments, except down in the lower right, you can see those flagstones that are up at an angle. Those are called raised stones. And we showed those at the concept level, and they were popular with council and the public. So we included them in the design. But for all of the streets, it's just shy of $500,000. So we're saying that even within the yellow box, let's do away with those. And we'll put in 2 to 3 inch red rock mulch for the time being, which can easily be taken out, doesn't require any subsurface. It's really pennies on the dollars compared to those stones. Those stones are like hand chiseled, individually chiseled anyway, flagstones that go in. And then the stone accent paving, and these all occur in the bulb outs, by the way, would be replaced with stamped and colored concrete. So the stamped and colored concrete is cheaper than the stone accent pavement. That came out of our value engineering. So in the yellow area, again, the point of this photo there is that that's where the only thing that would not be fully as bid. Everything else would be fully as bid. And then in the area with the red circles, which are South 100 East, 200 North, 2 blocks of 100 South, and then 200 South, the upper right circle, Mark, can you just point it out, please? Yeah, just up there, yeah. We'd remove the streetlights and simplified landscaping. Rock would go in instead of any additional landscaping. There wasn't a lot of landscaping down there. The biggest savings there are the streetlights. And the reason our team is comfortable recommending the streetlights down there is that doesn't have the pedestrian congestion or traffic congestion that the core area does, right? So in the outliers, there's less foot traffic at night, there's less car traffic at night, but in downtown, especially Center Street, where we put in raised medians, it's dark and we're got a lot of people moving and we need streetlights downtown. And these are pedestrian lights. They're not they're like 12 and 15-foot lights, I think. So those are the main differences in the what we're proposing as our recommended alternative, which was bid alternative 3 with the award alternative bid, reduce the scope here. The contractor has agreed to that. They've actually given us a revised bid tab that would reflect these changes. And that's how we have the numbers, right there, which we included, I think, also in the with the engineer's recommendation. And our design consultant team also recommends this after we spent those scores of hours on it, is because we think we know what council's direction was, which was, get the parking stalls, but also give us as much enhancements as we could in these amenities and in the downtown. And that was our intent. With, what's that? Yeah, let's just look at it one last time. Almost done talking, be happy to answer questions, but next slide. So again, this is the same slide you saw before. In our mind, it boils down to these 3 opportunities. If we want to use the existing bid, right? If council chooses not to go with this existing bid, the only way I could see to do it is to scope down the project, meaning less amenities. Plus, it will also mean to some degree less parking stalls. I don't know what the number is on them. And then go rebid it and hope that we get it closer to the budget. I know that's a lot of numbers. I tried to give you a lot in the agenda summary, but I didn't. Quite honestly, I don't. Sometimes this stuff happens on the last day, because we still have information coming in, like the PowerPoints. We don't get those done always ahead of time. But with that, I appreciate your patience. I'd be happy to try and explain any of the numbers we have or try and answer any questions council may have of us. Or
Questions for Chuck and Mark on the project itself. I think David is going to be talking about the financial alternatives, but if you have questions for these guys, Carly, did you have something you
Yeah,
want?
I can wait until you have questions about projects themselves, but we do have a pretty strong staff recommendation that can wait, but I want you to kind of hear our reasoning behind it.
Yeah, so let's start with questions about the project. Changes specifically, probably.
So I had asked a question about the tree reduction, and you mentioned that there was additional savings from avoided irrigation.
Yeah.
And in the change order draft, there's a line item for irrigation, and it doesn't look like there's any change to that.
it's because the contractor forgot to put that item in on the bid item, and they're going to eat some of their costs.
Oh, but the irrigation cost is like, as it is over twice what the estimate of probable cost is.
Yeah, it's a significant amount of money, but they're honoring their bid.
But it seems like, I mean, the reduction in tree count is reflected on the change order.
Yes.
So why isn't there also, if there's a reduction in irrigation expense as a result of that, why isn't there also a reduction in line 60?
Yeah. So I'll check on that. I don't know the answer. If that was your question, I didn't understand that today when the,
No, it just occurred.
Oh.
I haven't asked it until now.
okay,
It was a response to your previous answer.
gotcha. Yeah, I don't know why it does. It should reflect some change, except what I was saying is that they underbid that irrigation.
Oh, even at twice the estimate of
Yeah.
probable cost.
Yeah, so part of it is because of the irrigation is, we're boring instead of using open trench because we want to be less destructive means downtown. It's safer, less heavy equipment, and those costs are high. And I've worked on 3 boring projects since I've been here at the city. And we get a verbal bid from a subcontractor, and when it comes bid time, it's 50 to 100% more. And I think it's because everybody's doing boring and we're competing with everybody, like I was getting at later. So that's the main answer to that. I mean, we can be happy to go back and see if we can get that lowered if that's the way council wants to go.
Okay, no, that was just informational, I think, for me. So backing up to, this might be a little hypothetical, but the stall count was based on the downtown parking structure. And so if we had proceeded with the downtown parking structure and we'd seen this construction cost escalation, the DPS might not have nearly the aesthetics that we could talk about reducing. And so I'm just thinking, like, if we had proceeded with that project and we were in a similar situation where it was over, we might have been forced to go have a conversation with UDOT about, like, do we reduce the scope of the core, which is providing parking, or are they willing to chip in more?
Oh, yeah, I can only tell you what they told me then. Which was that, so our goal with the parking structure was 240. So it was 242, I think. So it was these 188 plus the 62 on the existing lot where the parking structure was going to be built on top of. So the total there was 242 for the parking structure. And I think what you're saying is, what if we'd have come in over budget, then what would we have done? We would be in the same position because UDOT said, we don't have any other money. Because again, and I, just for clarity, it's not UDOT money that we're using. The hotspot money is state legislatively appropriated. In my mind, the term general fund is the closest to our budget, but it's not gas tax money that's cycled back through the feds and cycled back through UDOT. And UDOT's comment back then was, the only reason you're dealing with us is because the legislature said this is a transportation related thing. So we're managing it for the cities and for us. So they didn't have any money for extra money. Did I answer your question on that?
Yes, but we'd still be in the same position. And so
if it came in over budget, we would be. Yeah.
Well, given what's happened with construction costs.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have built it in we'd have built it before the dark year. No, really, we were on that track in 2018. We'd have been out to bid, we stopped at 30% design plans. We were on a tight schedule, just like we were on King Creek Boulevard, right? I mean, I was whipping the horse and I should say that, but to get where we needed to be. So really, we would have had that under construction before the pandemic with all of its ramifications hit. But you're right, it might have, we didn't know, but back then, everybody had a better handle on cost estimates than we do now. I mean, it's just the reality of it all. I don't know if I've talked to my colleagues around the state, around the West. There's other cities and counties, local governments in the state, they experience the same thing we're going through. Except we're remote. Yeah, exacerbates our situation.
And then this is just a minor thing. Thank you for sharing the lighting information. On their website, they didn't list a 2700K lamp option. But I realize they may have added that since they last updated their
Yeah,
website.
we certainly wouldn't go above that.
Okay,
That's been real clear to me we've spec 2700. They said they can meet that.
okay, great.
Good. Questions on the project?
Can you remind me, like, how many parking spots we have now and what we're gaining with this?
Yep. So currently we have about 371 parking spots on the 11 blocks that we're talking about. Emma, we picked up 51 new ones. Downtown, we'd have the 371 from 513, which brings us to the 193. So right now, the answer, Jason, is that if we built a project as we're recommending here, we'd pick up 193 spots, including the 51 from Emma. So that would be 142 in the downtown dispersed parking that we're talking about now.
Other questions?
I'm just wondering if this is still the project we need. Does it solve? We're basing this on yesterday. Is it still forward looking or did we put too much emphasis on enhancements? And you know, that's just a big difference that we still have to come up with some way if we're going to continue this. I'm not convinced this solves our problems for today and tomorrow. Maybe it did in 2018, 2021. Or I just can't make it gel in my head.
Was that for me or for?
That was more just a comment. I don't need an answer.
Anybody else? All right, David.
Can I talk about the staff recommendation? Why I
please.
feel particularly strongly about it. Usually I don't take a pretty big position, but I've been thinking a lot about it since April, when we got that first bid in. My recommendation is that we pursue alternative 3, and there are a couple of reasons why. We know we can pay for it. So we're pursuing a grant that, we've been talking about from ARCOG that might make up a big difference in the shortfall, or it might not. We won't know until I think January, until this winter, whether we get awarded that grant. But even if we don't, the general fund can absorb the increased costs of about $1 million. This is what a rainy day fund is for unexpected costs. It's going to be a one-time contribution from rainy day. It's not ongoing costs. And David can speak more to that. Looking at alternatives 1 or 2 means we don't know how we're really going to, fund the shortfall. Our options are pretty speculative unless you're looking at bonding. And it's speculative with not much benefit, because even with alternative 3, we can pursue the amenities that we're losing, but we just will buy them when we know we can afford them. And looking for about $3 million in grants or some sort of bonding combination just it's a lot riskier. Keep in mind, we have a lot of other construction projects underway or about to get online. We may have shortfalls there too, and we may want to save our bonding capacity for those. And I don't recommend we explore bonding without reevaluating our strategic planning priorities, because you're going to be making decisions about this project and whether you want to use bonding capacity for it without weighing it against other potential projects coming down the line or talking about new ones this winter. So I just think it's prudent. We know we can afford it. We're not closing the door on any of the amenities. We'll just pursue them at a time when we're a little healthier. So David has opinions too, but do you have questions about that recommendation?
First, like a request, can we potentially get a list of the upcoming projects to see what we would potentially be jeopardizing in terms of not being able to fund if we were to dip in?
Certainly, yeah. And we talked a lot about them in strategic planning, and it's in that plan too. I'm happy to send that to you, what we kind of have coming online. One big one is Cane Creek. I mean, that we're hoping to get under construction shortly on that one. Another big expensive project that's complicated. I think the value engineering is more recent, and I think that the loan and grant were pretty generous. So I'm a little more comfortable with that one. But and Chuck can kind of talk about the bigger projects. We've got a bridge improvement that we're doing on 400 East that could have a lot of implications. What else are the big ones?
So Cane Creek, sorry, do you want me to talk
Yeah.
to the mic? Yeah, so Cane Creek has a lot of the same features as this downtown dispersed parking. So using some of these bid numbers, we're right at it on the cost estimate for Cane Creek right now. What we thought was going to be a real thick budget, we're now right there.
Yeah.
So I'm not predicting we're going to go over, but I'm not predicting we're going to go under.
Yeah.
The bridge widening is 400 East Pack Creek over Pack Creek. It was a 50-50 grant we got from UDOT 4 years ago. And we went out to bid and the contract, we had one contractor submit it and they've agreed to hold the bid until we decide if there's money, but we're $500,000 over budget on that project. Water projects, we've got the tank,
Water tank.
the water tank that needs to go in at Spanish Trail. We'd really like high in our priority list after King Creek is 100 East between 300 South and Uranium there behind City Market. That for those people who think we don't know about their road, we do know about their road. It's just a matter of getting it funding for that road, and the water line needs to be replaced with that road as well. So that raises those construction costs. So those in the priority list, those are there. We're also in the design right now for the wastewater treatment plant sewer outfall. We just began design, so we don't know if that's going to be in budget or not, but it's scheduled to be a $2 million project is what we budgeted. Then there's, several $100,000 for design. We're going to have to buy easements from the Nature Conservancy, we think. I don't know yet how much it is. We've started the process, but that's a potential for a project that may go over budget. That's a big project that I think we clearly want to.
We also have, keep in mind we're pursuing a lot of grant opportunities for a lot of the storm recovery that we're doing. Those require a lot of matches. Those aren't even designed yet. We don't know what kind of costs we're looking at. Our stormwater fund probably can't fund all of them. We're probably looking at some sort of bond, not just, leveraging stormwater funds, but maybe borrowing from the general fund too. So the good news is there's a lot going on. I would prefer, like my recommendation is let's make sure we can do what we already have, on here without kind of extending our financial situation much more, and just see what we can kind of get under our belt, especially because the amenities can still be acquired. We're not necessarily compromising on the vision of this project by moving forward with the $1 million range.
And some of the other projects, like the water tank, we've submitted a grant for that.
Mhm.
So we are looking for alternative funding sources. You just never know if you're going to get them or not.
So the rainy day fund, is that a reserve fund
It's the
in
fund
capital
balance.
improvements?
Yeah, it's our fund balance is where we would take it.
The general fund balance?
Yeah. I think, or is it from capital?
No, it'd be general
Oh,
fund
general
balance.
fund, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and so would that spend it down below the target level?
David can talk about that.
Meaning the statutory limit that you're supposed to have for fund balance, have 35%?
Well, I understand that to be a maximum,
Correct.
but then it seems like there's a minimum that's sort of like considered healthy.
Yes, depends on your sort of tolerance for risk, but generally 10% is what you see. 10 to 15% is what you see municipalities comfortable with. I will say this, if you took $1 million out of your unappropriated general fund balance at this point, you'd still be well above that.
Well above 15%.
Yeah, yes. Mhm.
And just a point of maybe education. It's my understanding is like the best financial practice is we don't want to bond for like the $1 million option just because it's not really worth issuing the bonds given such a small amount of the budget. So we kind of talked about that, but we're like, it's probably not the most prudent choice.
Mayor, I only have one other maybe data point to add, which is checking in with our financial advisor. Any bonding that would happen at this point, we're sort of away from the salad days of 1% interest rates.
Good point.
Where we'd be looking at 4.5% to 5.5% rates on a 20-year, tax exempt municipal bond at this point.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, but kind of a comment. I think we do need the parking downtown. People are gonna keep coming to Moab. We need downtown parking. We didn't do the structure, so we need to find parking someplace else. I don't think that there's ever gonna be a need for less parking than what's down there right now. But my concern is the city having to come up with $1 million out of that fund balance, you know, and especially, you know, I think, you know, Chuck said that, like what you said, that we get into this, that $1 million shortfall, it could be a Pandora's box once we get down there of different, you know, things that come up that need to be fixed, you know, whether they break a water line, a sewer line while they're doing it, you know, that could add to this. So my concern is the $1 million, and taking it out of the general fund is a concern because we do have a lot of other projects. Cane Creek could go over $1 million, you know, and are we better off not bonding for that and just paying that out of the rainy day fund? And is this something that could be put on the back burner until Cane Creek's done, you know, so that we know where we're ending up with Cane Creek, you know, and where we are financially after Cane Creek's done. We have, you know, the bridge may cost us more money, you know, and so we're pulling from the fund balance to fund this one project and speculating that we can find other funds for the bridge, you know, for Cane Creek, you know, for a water tank or something like that. And, you know, if we, in hedging our bets, that we'll get a grant, you know, like the one from the state that they've been talking about. So I guess my concern is I think we do need this project, and I think it does need to happen, but I feel like dipping in and spending $1 million, you know, just doing quick math on it, the city, after, you know, if you divide 142 stalls by $1 million, that comes out to $7,000 a stall. Is that financially responsible, you know, feasible, or what we should be doing with that, you know? So that's my concern. I think we need this project. I have a huge amount of heartburn over dipping in and spending $1 million.
And really two, right? Because we have the initial $1 million
Right,
contribution.
yeah, exactly.
And now we're spending about 2 million. And do you want to speak to the bid, Chuck?
We gotta fix this.
Yeah, is that too short?
Yeah.
We're going on.
It says the chair. Yeah, so just for clarity, Jason, the bid is good for like 60 days is what we ask bidders. So if council elects not to award the bid in that time frame, sometimes you can get, like for the bridge widening right now, they've said they'd honor their bid for another 60 days. I wouldn't be surprised if LeGrand did the same thing. But if we waited till Cane Creek was done, that's like
It's
a year.
gonna go up.
It's a year. It's a year. So we'd have, my point is that the bid we'd have to reject the bid, or just, and then we'd have to go out and rebid a year or a year and a half from now, whatever Cane Creek's done.
And to me, I'm not so worried about the bid. I'm worried about UDOT funding, the
Right.
hotspot funding or whatever it is that's going in on this.
Mhm.
You know, because I think that even if we had to put this on the back burner for a year, or at this time, probably 18 months before Cane Creek's done,
Mhm.
you know, then we can sit down and go, okay, we came out all right with this. We now think we know we're going to pay 20% more, or we bid it again. I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, because that is a ton of money, you know, but we may get down with Cane Creek and go, hey, this cost us, it's cost us 1.5 million out of the general fund that we chose to draw from instead of, you know, bonding for or whatever, or the bridge, you know, so that's, that's my concern.
Well, go ahead, Luke.
The one thing that I think we should also potentially take into consideration is the economic benefits of the dispersed parking, like particularly in combination with our municipal code rewrite. Ideally, like having more parking available downtown and having businesses be able to actually expand and everything has the prospect of increasing sales tax revenue. And so holding off on bringing in the revenue might actually end up like costing us some funds. So like potentially, like ideally this should drive some like economic stimulation within downtown and can potentially help offset some of the projected like excess costs of King Creek. So it's, I totally see like where you're coming from. It's partly like, where do we want to put our priorities? Like, I think the King Creek project is a really fantastic project. I'm a huge fan of the Complete Streets thing. It feels very community and kind of like locals oriented, by helping like kids access school more safely, people being able to bike to work more safely, and all of that stuff. But like listening to a lot of the candidates and everything, a lot of them talk about the chaos that is Main Street, that is trying to get around Main Street. So those are issues that our locals like encounter. I think it's issues that potentially really detract from the Moab experience. Yeah, I think that's potentially a factor that
I totally agree. Yeah, there is an economic.
And one of the things we can do during the strategic planning process is we can look at all these projects, and then maybe at that point we can say, you know what, we've got this project, this project, this project. We didn't get any grant funding. We did. Then we can consider bonding if we need to for multiple projects instead of just one.
True. Yeah. The final decision certainly isn't made. And we do know, I mean, one reason I feel kind of comfortable with the alternative 3, if it's, you know, something you guys want to, if you think it's a priority, is that this is a priority and it has been for many years. You know, you want to purchase it. I don't know that there will be more favorable conditions. It's totally speculative. And it is within our means. It's more than we thought we were going to pay. But we have a good opportunity with the grant. We can look for other grants too, I mean, we have a couple months, certainly. I wouldn't, anyway, that's why I kind of feel comfortable spending a little more, because you know you're going to buy it. So you might as well do it now. And it's probably going to be the cheapest than it will be for a long time.
If we go with that alternative 3, does that reduce the safety or the connectivity
No,
streets?
no, it does not. And we're keeping in what I called the hardscape earlier, which are all the bulb outs and which are really part of the Complete Streets package to slow traffic down, make it safer streets. Those are still in that alternative 3. It's just that later on at each one of those locations, we originally had more amenities that we've had to reduce at some of those outside the core area, outside the yellow area. But we still have our parking stall count of 142. So UDOT will be happy with giving us the money because of that as well. And we have that, we build the infrastructure that we can enhance later. And by the way, just for clarity, as Carly said, if let's say for conversation that you went with alternative 3 and you said, take it out of reserve funds tonight. If indeed, and we applied today for the application for that GoEO grant, 600,000 came in the door and we've applied for this grant. The general fund can be reimbursed with that $600,000 worth of money, right? Because it's just David and his magic with his pen and paper and says the 600,000 is what we're paying for the project, not the 100,000, right, David? That 400,000 would be the net effect.
if we don't get this grant now, is the Cane Creek project something that would potentially be eligible for it like later on down the road?
Yes.
Maybe,
Yes.
yeah.
It's an annual one.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
like
annual.
Cane Creek could be, and depending on where we are, some grants have different, you know this better than I do, but like when you can apply for a grant, like if you're mid-construction, usually you're not eligible. But I don't know about ARCOG, but we could look at options down the line to see if we could just fill in the shortfall.
Yeah, I think that, actually think that one, Richard, I think talked to him, and I think the shortfall is okay on the ARCOG grant. They're putting in more and more. The feds had that. I don't know if you recall a few months back where they said, oh, we're looking for projects that have shortfalls due to the pandemic.
Right. And they're happy to fill in like
Yeah.
midstream projects.
And everybody in every community in the state went for it,
Yeah.
right?
Any other questions? Comments?
I also assume that UDOT would not be very happy with this.
No.
No, like, yeah, and it's worth kind of
Or the
state,
Right,
how much
right,
do we want to
no.
test them on this?
Right.
Or the state. Remember, this is legislative money.
Yeah.
I agree.
And we've already had to repay them back
Right.
$1 million almost in design cost. Right?
No,
No, they've waived that.
They what?
I think they
They
forgave
waived
us
it.
for that.
They did waive
for the
it.
roundabout.
For the parking structure
Yeah.
cost, yeah, it was about 300,000.
We're
Oh.
probably at our limit for forgiveness.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
say.
and we turned back the roundabout money,
And the ground, yeah, that's right. So.
so.
I have a question. There was a lot of information presented tonight on some of the slides about the alternatives and numbers. Can we move to table this so we can digest all of that information?
Are you making a motion to table?
Yes.
Is there a second? Motion failed for lack of second. Do I have a motion to approve the contract with Kilgore Companies with an alternative? Preferably the one that's being recommended by staff. But that's your choice.
Totally. No hard feelings.
Is there a D? I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve the alternative bid of Kilgore Companies doing business with LeGrand Johnson for the downtown dispersed parking construction project in the amount of $7,256,674.20. For option C, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Is that good?
It's option 3, actually, but that's okay.
Three, okay, option 3.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, motion made by Jason, seconded by Luke. Discussion, Jason.
No, thank you. It's been a long project and
Mm.
thanks for addressing my concerns. Well, they've gone away, but I think that this is something that we need to, it needs to be done because it's not going to be cheaper in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
Luke, discussion.
Not
Or
much. I'm assuming this is already happening, but just kind of a request to continue to look for grants and other like potential kind of financial aids that we can find along the way. But yeah, I think this is desperately needed for our downtown corridor. I think there's a lot of value in trying to preserve our relationship with UDOT in and of itself. And yeah, hopefully the economic benefits that arise from this project can help offset potential shortcomings that we'll experience in future projects.
Any other comments, discussion? Ronnie,
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on what's being proposed here. So alternative 3 is accepting the bid at 7.2 million. And because we think when we put in our 3 and our 6%, et cetera, we might get to 6.6. The first question is, are we accepting the 7.2 because that's just to allow for contingencies and other things, that gap?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question, but if I do understand it, it's no, that's not the reason for the, whether you went for the, say council went for the base bid, we'd still need the 3, 6 and the 19% increase for those 3.
Oh, no, I totally get that.
Oh,
But the bid that we're making a motion to accept is like $7.2 million. And so in our packets, it said that we expected we might get to about 6.6 million or 6.8. So I'm
Yeah.
asking about the difference.
yeah. So in that, the motion that we put in the summary, I think we said authorize staff to negotiate down the change order. So it's just a process thing. If you pass the motion as Jason presented it, it's clear to me that your intent is to go for alternative 3. If this motion passes and you do this, we'll have the mayor sign the contract for 7.2. We already have a written proposal from LeGrand to reduce the scope, which is included, I think, in the packet for the draft change order. Change order 1 will be reducing the project by like $1.8 million. And then away we go. It's the same thing.
So the scope is reduced.
The
That's
scope
how
is-
we get it to just to $1 million contribution.
right, so there'll be
The
different
scope is reduced below 6.6 million or so?
No, down
scope of the
2.6.
project.
to that point.
Right,
yeah.
The map where we showed you with the yellow area stays the same, except for the raised stones. And in the other red circled areas, they get the street lighting taken out and landscaping, except for red rock. That's the scope reduction. And then, so when you reduce the scope, we reduce the costs.
And
We can go back to,
so I stay clear with the motion. The idea is just between all the conversation, I got confused that the aesthetics that are more expensive are on hold, or that they will all happen at the same
For
time.
those streets, and
Yeah.
then we could, they could be installed later on when
The
we
streets
know we
in
have
red
money.
with the
Yeah,
red circles.
Maybe it's worth it. We just quickly show it to you again, okay? I understand there's a lot here.
No, I think I get it. I mean, part of my concern is some of the expense of some things when I look at like boulders and landscaping and stuff. Does one ever go bid? I understand streets need to be surfaced, things need to be repainted. But does one ever do the landscaping, since you guys are saying the landscaping is so much of the expense? Does one ever bid that part separately? Because is it not feasible that we might be able to get a bidder who's closer and in that respect cheaper if you don't have to haul materials as far?
We've
Like-
been through it twice now
Mhm.
and
You can't separate though out the landscaping.
no, and we've tried getting local people to bid it.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, there's only one company that even comes close to being large enough.
Well, yeah, to be able to do all of this parking and the landscaping for
Yeah,
sure.
no, this,
Most people don't
this
have.
is a big enough project where there's going to be, in my opinion, there's going to be so much disruption in the downtown for the construction. Why would we do it 2 or 3 times if we can go through and get it done once with one contractor? And there's an economy of putting in things like the underground boring for the irrigation, for the conduits, for the streetlights. Totally wiping out the landscaping would take us below, we'd have to rebid it again, if that's what you're suggesting, because we've gone out of that 25% mode. We'll.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if you ever just do the streets and, leave the empty dirt areas for, a landscaper to do separately if that ever drops costs. But never mind. And then with the RCOG grant, I asked in the answer sheet, but no one responded to the discussions at the end of our last meeting. There were discussions about EDAB was about to meet, and I think Michael Black was going to talk to the county about their previous offer to partner on this. So I know the initial October deadline passed for the letters of intent for that grant. So in the end, did the county and the city collaborate, or did you guys both apply for different things? Just so I know whether I might expect $600,000 or 1.2 million.
Yeah, I think the county decided on other projects that they were going to move forward
Yeah.
with, and the city.
I was just gonna
The city is going to apply for the 600,000.
That's
So
correct. It's decisions were made and the county will be applying for a grant separate from the city's grant. The city is applying and as Chuck said, we have applied for $600,000 for this project.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
And
then-
just to clarify,
yeah.
we did talk about, and what I talked about at the meeting with the city council was collaborating with the county on projects, and we still are talking about this. This isn't the only project.
right.
We
Yeah,
will
no,
be
I just
working
meant
with
this
them.
one. Yeah. And then a question just in general, because some of us have been looking at contracts and bids for a while. And so, but I'm no expert, so maybe you guys can explain to me. I've certainly noticed over the years that at certain points when we go out to bid, as part of the whole package, we have contingencies and public participation and everything in there from the start. So I'm a little bit confused about why are we now talking about how that has to be added on the back end? Is it a just different kind of contract, or?
It's because. No, it's the same kind of contract. It's just that we were always scrambling to find money for that, for public involvement, and it was always dip into reserve fund. And now we're just being upfront with you because this budget is so tight that we know, because this is a high touch project in downtown, right? That we need to have that level of public involvement. That's why we, one of the reasons we went out and got Lisa went out and got the on-call contract that you guys approved the other week. So now we have a number and we're charging it to the project.
Yes.
So on these big projects, we're charging it to the project. In the past, we didn't charge it. And we're just upfront saying, hey, there's a cost for public involvement. There's a cost for construction administration. There's
Yeah.
a cost for change orders.
It just gets a little confusing as a council member who's been sitting here from the beginning hearing, okay, we have 5.9 million for the dispersed parking. And my impression was that was already packaged in. So now it feels like it's on top.
It's because
So-
we did that at okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
We've always done it at the design level before.
Uh-huh.
So that was always included in the design.
Yeah.
Like Cane Creek Boulevard, they included everyone saw, we had a public involvement firm as a sub-consultant to our design.
Yeah,
Now we're saying on these big construction projects, we need to have public involvement on the big construction projects, kind of like UDOT did on the widening project. You know, they had a public involvement person who, you know, a business says, hey, these guys are blocking my driveway or whatever. They'd have someone do it. So now the difference, Ronnie, is you're seeing it on construction projects.
gotcha.
And part of it, maybe to clarify further, we got the on-call public engagement consultant recognizing that contractors bidding on constructions projects like this, and especially local ones, might not have the expertise to manage a public engagement contractor, right? And we wanted a greater control over the work of that public engagement work. But you know, LeGrand might not have the expertise to include public engagement. They might not bid because they're thinking, I don't want to manage this part of the contract. So that's why the city is sort of taking on that role, you know, managed by Lisa and in coordination with Chuck. And it's also just a way for us to kind of capitalize on those costs instead of it coming from like general funds. Well, it is going to be technically in this case, but it's a kind of, it's managed more like the capital assets.
And in fact, I spoke with multiple contractors during the course of this project and Cane Creek about, hey, do you guys want to do the public involvement or do you want us to do it? And they're like, we don't want to do it. It's not our gig. Our thing is compaction and bring material in on time. And I understand that from their perspective. So this is our effort to, you know, be upfront with you on construction and on these big construction projects. I don't know if small ones, we can't do it in-house, you know, but on these big ones, there's not enough resources in-house to do it.
Okay, well, I will just try and be clear.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote against this as it is, and not because I have anything against the bidder. It sounds like, you know, I know costs have gone up and I think these are probably good prices and stuff, but I cannot, as someone who's been sitting here for years, watching things escalate and watching residents say, when is there going to be something for us? We want beautification. We don't want just other parking lots. We want this to come as a package. And I feel like time and time again, they're sold short on getting things like beautification. And now as we looked at climate change with some cooling and protection of dark skies and the safety things that they keep asking for. So honestly, I couldn't really be in favor of this unless it was scaled down and we were doing it block by block to give people what they thought they were going to get, and we could deliver block by block with amenities that we could afford, and maybe we just end up doing fewer blocks. And because it seems like, no offense to UDOT, but we keep doing these projects and then we keep ending up with unexpected costs, and I just I'm not okay with, you know, saying one more time that, okay, residents, just wait. It may or may not come, because it just doesn't seem to. So that's just my opinion.
Any other comment, discussion items?
So this, I think I'm going to vote for it, but I do have concerns. This started out, as Ronnie has pointed out, as a package, which included a lot of beautification elements. Even though part of what I hear people wanting is more pedestrian amenities and bike amenities. Basically, what we're delivering are sharrows and the existing narrow sidewalks, which also will not really support a vibrant pedestrian-oriented downtown that has more development. And that's the direction of urban planning, is to reduce the amount of the public space that is devoted to cars, not build it up and turn downtown into a parking lot. And as we chip away at the amenities, that's what we're doing. And so I really hope that we don't chip away at it anymore as this process proceeds. I had made a comment about the irrigation, but as this discussion has proceeded, I realized that the irrigation as bid should stay, because the bulk of the expenses is in planning. Like, the expense is not in the planting of the unplanted areas, it's the boring, like you said. And so, and if that isn't done now, it's unlikely that it will be in the near future. Whereas there's the potential to sort of complete that aspect of the amenities and the tree planting piecemeal, because those don't necessarily need to be a big bite. I would well, hopefully you'll do it at strategic planning, which is coming up soon.
Yeah.
But the way that discussion went about, well, maybe there'll be 500,000 here or 1 million there and overruns, it's like, yeah, it seems like there needs to be a more comprehensive look rather than just saying, we can take 1 million up for this project and then who knows what's left for the other project overruns.
Right.
Yeah. That's all.
Thank you. Yep.
One other thing. We did have one public design process through this whole thing, and that was the downtown plan, which didn't do much physical design. But what it did was it proposed removing some parking from Main Street.
Mhm.
It did, and it installed medians that were conceptually planted
Mhm.
and traffic calming was installed, but that was the rub, is that we removed parking from Main Street
Yes.
and it was not popular.
Well, we don't know how popular it was.
Yeah.
We haven't really had a fully vetted public process. I mean, that was as close as we came. And then we've like sort of been reactionary. This whole project has been a little bit of tail wagging the dog. We didn't start with design and vision for what we want downtown to be. We started with,
Money.
here's money
Mhm.
and here are the stipulations associated with it. And then we designed to those stipulations. So I know that it's in our mind, in the city's mind, to do really good downtown planning, to drive future investment. So I really hope that happens.
And I want to thank you, staff. I know you guys have just put hours and hours and hours into this. It's not been my favorite plan all along, but I haven't voted against the processes as we've gone along. I agree with Jason. I have a lot of heartburn coughing up another $1 million, but I think he's also right when he says it's got to be done. We're not ever going to say we can get rid of our parking spaces unless we get our little George Jetson cars and they can just hover. But
That will happen someday.
I know it.
That's sort of parking garages.
And I think this is, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Okay, I have a motion made by Jason to approve alternative 3 in the bid from Kilgore Companies doing business as LeGrand Johnson for downtown dispersed parking construction project in the amount of $7,256,674.20 and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Going to call for a roll call vote. Jason?
When you say
Wait, who's a
option
second? Do we
three.
have a second?
Luke?
Oh, Luke, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Aye.
Ronnie?
No,
Luke? Kayla?
Aye.
Tawny? Aye. Motion passes 4-1 with Ronnie voting nay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll proceed forward and stay tuned because there'll be a lot of action going downtown.
Right.
Probably mainly after the first of the year because of all the buildup. But thank you.
Right. And we will be having a more robust conversation. Unfortunately, some of you all won't be a part of that conversation during our strategic plan about downtown in general. And I know Michael and his team are very anxious to start that discussion. All right. Our last item of business is item 6.4, consideration of an encroachment license agreement for 98 Center LLC. And I believe Nathan is on the call for this one. I just want to mention that, and I'd also like to direct staff, that there was an administrative policy that was passed by the council in October of 2020 regarding how we go through the public process for consideration of encroachment licenses and city-owned property. And so in this particular situation, we elected in the email that I sent you to just use the public comment portion in order to get that public comment. And the council has the option to do public hearings, town halls. There's several abilities to get that public input. And for me, it was very uncomfortable to just kind of say, okay, well, this project, we're just going to do a public comment, because how do we gauge what projects or what entities we're going to do a more robust public hearing or town hall or whatever. So I'm directing staff to update that policy. And in the meantime, we're not going to be considering any other requests to utilize or encroach on public property, because I think it's really important for us to get that administrative policy really clear. I know the intent. I went back and looked at the meetings, and Ronnie, some of your comments were comments that you referred to a resident, and I was the resident you were referring to at the time. But I just feel like it creates kind of an unfair process, and it puts a really difficult decision for you guys to make when we go down that public process road and how we go about doing it. And I feel we should be consistent for every request that comes through. So we're going to hear more about this eventually from staff.
Yeah, probably in the municipal code rewrite. This is an area where it's not totally clear, and we have this administrative policy, and Nathan can speak more about his concerns. But it's appropriate to go into the municipal code and how we kind of deal with licenses versus encroachments versus those other kinds of things. It's not totally clear right now. So more to come on that.
So any comment, anything from staff? And I'll
do you
just
get
ask
questions?
council for questions.
So if this is being tied to the municipal code rewrite, which has been desired for years, I'm a little concerned about not considering any of them. It seems like the decision about what public process isn't that hard compared to some other decisions we have to make.
It's like
And-
who's making the decision and what kind of process for different kinds of use of city property, right? So not just maybe encroachment licenses or those kinds of things, just the bigger questions in that policy. And it's probably more appropriate as an ordinance rather than an administrative policy too, if we are going to have something like that. Of course, that's Nathan's advice. Sorry, I don't mean to speak to you, Nathan.
But I just hate to see like some other minor business thing be stalled while we work on our policy.
Really good point. So I can tell you like the sort of how I feel about like the public trust, and we're talking about like private enterprise using the public trust. Generally, it's not something that is recommended unless there's a really compelling interest. Now we're trying to accommodate like the needs of these, applicants who are applying for a building permit and just their unusual situation. We don't get approached about these a lot. So I think we do have some time to consider it. I think what we can say to applicants kind of at the beginning is it's unusual for us to kind of give away the public trust like this. You're probably not going to get it if you're just offsetting a cost onto the public trust that we think that private enterprise should be bearing. So sort of a long-winded way of saying it would be unusual to grant these, but I think it's just such an unusual situation that we want to accommodate the need.
Was not the agreement with Rocky Mountain Power for them to do charging at Lions Park similar?
Similar, it wasn't like an encroachment agreement. It was a little different.
But they're
in my-
getting use of
Yep.
public property for a period of years. And
Yeah,
this encroachment agreement is also time limited.
it is time limited. Yeah.
Yeah, I get like where that's coming from. I think my concern is like, I don't know the extent of it, but I have a feeling that a lot of the buildings in Moab have a lot of like dirty secrets hidden behind the walls.
Right.
That you don't really become made aware of until the walls come down.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of uncertainty associated like with wanting to upgrade and remodel, and particularly for like a business, when they have to shut down and they kind of tear down the walls and there's like new things that they need to come into compliance with, which adds costs. So like we're increasing the cost of the renovation or whatever it is, while also keeping them closed longer. So reducing the amount of revenue that they can bring in. And I am concerned that all these moves that we're making towards promoting like an economic revitalization of downtown and everything, that we might not have been seeing a lot of like situations like this, but we might be on the cusp of seeing a lot more. And there is a part of me that it kind of like goes along with what a lot of developers are saying, that having these like required publicly noticed meetings that require a forum, like add uncertainty, add cost, where like, yeah, if we can't get things in on time on the agenda, that's an extra 2-week delay. That's like an extra 2 weeks of no revenue. And so we're potentially hindering our local businesses to do the things that we have been asking for so long, which is to be able to better like adapt and accommodate like the changing and growing like visitor base that we have. And so I guess this can be like fleshed out in the municipal code rewrite and everything, but is there some sort of option where we can identify things that can be handled like administratively?
That would be that
Right.
rewrite discussion for sure, because you want to, I mean, it's really like I like these kinds of discussions because they're sort of about like, it's really about who is paying for the cost of redevelopment in Moab. And the question is, would be a council policy decision of how permissive are we going to be when we have these kinds of requests, and who is going to make the decision? Do we want maximum flexibility and just direction to like the city manager under certain circumstances, whereas there are these like meatier, bigger kind of property disposition questions that come to city council? And I think it's going to be a discussion of where do we draw those lines, and like, who do we want to pay the costs? Is the public trust going to be used as an option where private development is, putting a cost onto the public trust? That is a policy question, to have, and definitely like a really important debate. Or do we want individual property owners to bear the costs of the redevelopment of their private property? Just more, like really interesting discussion.
Nathan.
Sorry, Nathan. I've known you've had your hand up this whole time and I totally ignored you.
Just things real quick. We do, in looking at this, and this was the first time I've worked on an encroachment permit request with Moab, and I think it was the first time your Carly or anybody else really had. It's been a while. The last one was done in 2017. So we're not aware, we're only aware of this one and another one, which does need to submit a renewal request. And so I would recommend that we let that other one go before we do another code update on it. The other point that I want to make is that most of these building permits, the vast majority of them don't need to come before the council and would not be subject to this policy. It's only those that seek to encroach on the public right of way that require council approval. And so I think the chances of getting more encroachments are rare, and how the council wants to deal with those is something we would need some more direction for, because right now we have the policy. And my concern with the policy, as the mayor stated, is we just don't know, and to Luke's point, when does somebody have to do a public hearing with a survey? And when does somebody just have to do a normal public meeting with 24 hours notice and public comment? And so that's my concern, is how we make sure we treat everyone consistently. And that the policy doesn't really address that.
Any questions?
I just want to touch on what Luke was saying about some of the older buildings in town. And Center Street Square has an interesting history. When my husband rented his space, his ceiling was on his floor. So it got fixed.
Okay.
How is he cutting hair? No, it's true. I mean,
Yeah, it's an old building.
But until we have a policy, we will probably need to do this on a piece by piece, situation by situation basis.
well, and that's why we're doing it this way. And when I asked you guys, how do you want to handle this? My sense was, let's just get this on the agenda and do public
Right.
comment, because very few people are going to have an issue with what they're requesting.
Right.
But I do feel we need to get that policy so that you guys, so it doesn't become political. It doesn't become favoritism. We're friends with these people. We want to get it done. We don't want to have any of that. We want to have a solid policy for how we go about approving these kind of licenses. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the license agreement
For 98 Center.
for 98 Center.
Okay, great.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made by Kalen, seconded by Tawny. Any further discussion, Kalen?
No.
Tawny?
No.
Anybody else?
Um,
Ronnie?
I just had got a few questions from the public, so I thought someone who knows more about this than I do can clarify. A chase is pretty much a cover that goes over an air duct, correct, or exhaust system. I mean, I know it has multiple
That's right.
definitions depending on the context, but in the exhaust system context.
So this is an air intake system and an exhaust system that's required by code. And the proprietor has no other options except to put it on the outside of the building at this point. So the chase encloses both of those, the in and out. So we can't see them from the outside. It just looks like it's a chase. It's just covered and fits the aesthetic of the building.
Yeah. And the other question I got from people was, it's a little hard to tell from the different drawings. If you just stand at the edge of the current edge of the building, how far out is it going to come? Some of the drawings look like 1.5 feet. Some of them look like 2.5 feet maybe. So I just got that question, so I thought I'd ask.
So in this situation, the property line is the edge of the building, and then there's 30 inches of planter strip that is not currently used for pedestrian movement or anything like that. And then there's a 4-foot sidewalk. The chase will not encumber the sidewalk, so it'll only come out to the edge of the sidewalk. And I just want to check my numbers on that really quick, but
No, thanks. I think some people are just wondering what to visually expect. So that helps them.
yes, it'll come right up to the edge of the sidewalk, but it won't go beyond that. And that is 30 inches.
Any other questions? All right, I have a motion made by Kalen to approve the encroachment license agreement for 98 Center LLC, seconded by Tawny. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, that's the end of our general business, and we'll move on to city manager updates.
Great. Okay, an announcement from our treasurer's office, or rather a reminder, we're currently in a period of open enrollment for trash service. So if you want to decrease your trash or recycling service, you have until October 31st to do so. Contact the treasurer's office with questions about how to do it. This is just, I think there's about a month every 6 months where we allow for an open enrollment reduction. A reminder that we have a sustainability action plan open house upcoming on November 1st. It's at the Grand Center, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Please come out and provide input on this draft plan. We hope to have that plan before the end of the year. So this council will be approving it, probably the December meeting. Just a quick update. We talked about this, I believe, at our last meeting. Moab Area Transit Service. Its fall and winter hours are reduced now. So it's going from October 16th. Oh, no, not quite. October 16th to March 15th. The on-demand service will be Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Their fixed route will no longer be available during the winter. And then upcoming, really exciting election season upon us. All of this information can be found online on the city's website, but the ballots for the municipal election will be mailed out October 31st, the week of October 31st. Everyone can return them by mail, or they can drop them off at the City Hall Recorder's Office or the Grand County Clerk's Office. Be sure to postmark them by November 20th or drop them off by November 21st in person. And Flu Clinic is this Friday for all of you 9 to 11. Just come and get your booster.
Years old.
Have COVID?
I don't think they have COVID. I haven't heard a word.
They do have them at City Market.
They do. Maybe they do have COVID. I forgot to ask if they have it. And just a quick update on two joint efforts with different intergovernmental agencies. It sounds like the county is going to be kicking off their emergency operations plan effort. They have a bid from a consultant who will help them come along and they've requested that we cost share in some of the fees for that consultant, which I think is appropriate because we benefit from the emergency operations plan ourselves. I think we'll be a stakeholder. And now that I'm talking about it, I think we can have Cora come and present on the plan process. It's a big strategic plan priority. And so they've requested a cost share of like $9,000, which is within my signing authority. I think it's a good faith partnership to show them that we will be partners in the development of this plan and we'll be able to provide a lot of input. And then finally, I wanted to mention that Keelan and I met with the Solid Waste District a few weeks ago with Mike Kennerly, who is very anxious to get some sort of agreement worked out with us again. We talked about ways that we could potentially tailor their rate study to accommodate some of our questions when it comes to whether we want to renew the contract or what we would like the rates to look like and how they should be structured. So he's going to be getting a quote to me on what that kind of cost increase might be, but it just might be a little better tailored to the questions the city has as we renegotiate the contract. And I haven't heard back from him on that, but hopefully it's not, I don't expect it to be a huge amount of money. And those are my updates.
Thanks, Carly. Council members, we'll start with you, Luke.
I don't have too much. I attended the trail mix meeting today, where we had a very fruitful and productive discussion with citizen who attended regarding kind of trail mixes approach and collaboration with motorized user groups. And so I think that's something that the group is taking into consideration as to how we incorporate that into our regular processes. GCAT is having a volunteer appreciation day on November 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. Their prizes will be given out to volunteers. They already have some prizes on hand, but would appreciate some additional donations from local businesses if they have the capacity. There will also be a band from 7 to 8 p.m. If anybody wants some live music. And then we started taking a look at the Monte LaSalle Forest Service Plan. Trail Mix will be drafting a letter advising the Forest Service of our group's kind of position on the plan. Yeah, the last time this plan was updated was in 1986. We were told it should be revised every 10 to 15 years, so it is very much out of date. And yeah, for anybody who would like to access the proposed plan, you can Google Monte LaSalle planning. And it'll be in the first link, and then you scroll down about half a page and you'll see a small photo of a very scenic scene, and you need to click on that. Above it, it'll say click on the image below to access the maps, and at that point that'll take you to an ArcGIS map that allows you to look at the various alternatives that are being proposed. So yeah, it's a little bit hard to find. We had people in our group who said they spent like an hour looking for it. So not the most intuitive, but hopefully those instructions make that a little bit clearer. And then other than that, I attended the council candidate debates. I'm really excited at the quality of candidates that we have this year, and looking forward to see who Jason and I at the very least will be serving with next. But other than that, that's it.
Thanks, Luke. Tawny.
I honestly don't have an awful lot. All my meetings are in the next couple of weeks. I had an experience and I feel like there's a person in our community that needs a shout out and I don't know who they are. Last Wednesday, I was going back to work out on the highway from lunch and I saw on the side of the road what I thought was a tire that had come off of a truck. As I got even with it, the tire had shoes on. There was a person laying on the side of the highway. I got pulled over and I stopped and I called the sheriff and turned back around because I couldn't tell the condition that they were in. By the time I got turned around, they were sitting up. But, and a couple of other people had stopped. And the person that was on the ground was very compromised. And two young people from either DNR or DWR, I can't remember what was on their shirts, stopped to help. The young woman that was with either one of those agencies stayed with the person that was belligerent because they wanted to walk down the highway. And she stayed with that person until the deputies got there. And I think really and truly, she prevented her from getting out into traffic and being hit. It was kind of a little scary situation. So that young woman truly needs kudos. That's all.
Thanks for sharing that, Tommy. Ronnie?
Okay, let's see. So yesterday we had a celebration for Indigenous Peoples Day. So I wanted to thank the city for sponsoring and making performances available along with Res Western and Red Cliffs and Synergy. We had a combination of singing and violin and dancing and just some educational conversation about the importance of retaining Native language and Native history for families and others, and how different ways in which people are doing that. But a lot of other interesting stuff and some great kneel down bread from Bitty Baby Foods, and Navajo, the Native American Club brought some Navajo tea. And I wanted to thank the mayor for doing the proclamation and Tawny for coming and reading it. And just so many people came and helped us set out chairs and stuff. So thank you again, Summer and Jason. And I know two of our officers, Officer Perry, and I know I saw Monty Reisenhuber, and then Conrad from the water department helped, and Steven Stocks and a whole bunch of other residents. So thanks, because it's a lot of work for just me and Emily otherwise. I think at one point I counted 83 people, there probably at some point more, but it seemed very successful. I should thank Pete Sands and former Mayor Niehaus for, making the event possible and just bringing all these great people. And so I'm hoping that I had a conversation with Emily, and as I'm going off the council, she and I were discussing, and we kind of had an ask for the city moving forward, and that the city consider this becoming a city supported event that's budgeted and supported by Mark or other staff working with local Indigenous community to format the event for the coming year. I think Emily and I are happy to still volunteer and be a part, but we won't always, be sitting in this room. So it would be great if the city adopted that as part of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. At minimum, we'd like some discussion about that at strategic planning. And another ask I had after talking to one of our Indigenous staff members was we've done, and I know some shout outs to city staff before, like when we looked at some of our women in law enforcement on social media, just recognizing people and getting to know them a little bit better, and a request that we do that with our Indigenous staff as well. I know, obviously ask them if they're comfortable, but there is at least one person that would mean a lot to. Let's see. We had a GWISA meeting on the 28th of September, which was in makeup for the meeting we were going to have the 21st, but we moved it because the auditor. So audit generally good, other than, and some of you may have experienced this with districts you're on, not all of the board members have been doing their Open and Public Meeting Act trainings. So they're caught up on that now, but I think we all kind of learn as we get in these boards and districts, when you're dealing with volunteers, people kind of have to learn about checking the basic boxes. We had some interesting discussion about different things. They were working on increasing water rates, studying that, an interconnect, just like they did with the city. It's basically an interlocal emergency water interconnect agreement with San Juan Spanish Valley Special Service District. Thompson has approached them about the potential of some water rights. I brought this up before, but for their potential interest in building a reservoir up in Thompson. And there was some discussion about that. We also had discussion about the interconnect with the city. That process is still going forward. I think they looked at 4 locations, and GWISA still favors the one on the north side of the golf course. Let's see, we did talk about, I emailed you guys all about this, but they received an almost $30,000 bill related to the water utility resource management plan that they weren't expecting. So thanks to Michael Black for starting the process of getting them some information on what we think might have happened there. That seems like it might take a little while to resolve. We discussed the fact that they have an annual dam inspection, and just for anyone who's interested and ever wants to know, it might be kind of interesting to get in touch with them. Part of what we just discussed is maintenance at the dam. So, certain trees get taken down and weeding occurs. But I don't know if all of our residents have ever seen the flood inundation I can say this, inundation maps for Ken's Lake and what happens between Ken's Lake and the Colorado River if there is a failure. So those are kind of fascinating to look at. I recommend people look at those. And it's just nice because then they show their flow charts for what happens for information transfer, just to let different parties know if the dam is either in a fail position or just, threatened at and there's just a danger of fail. So anyway, let's see. Jason will cover EMS meetings. There was one thing when Jason wasn't there that we talked about that I just was going to bring up. So EMS, just wanted to say thanks for the improved communication when there are city road closures due to, water or other public works things going on. The only thing they still need is communication or a connection with someone related to special events, because somehow the message didn't get to them that the road was going to be closed for the arts festival for Red Rock. So maybe we can just tie them with someone at the Mark or with Kelly or someone so they get updates about that. Other than that, I went to the 25th anniversary Christmas Box International Family Support Center event. That was nice. And just a reminder to people in the community, that facility exists in part to offer respite to families. So if parents or other caretakers of children need a 2 to 4 hour break during the course of the week, this isn't daily, but 2 to 4 hours total, either just because you're going to a medical appointment, you need someone to watch your kids, or you're just feeling overwhelmed, or you just need to do some self-care, or you have an appointment or something, they are a resource. And they also do have a shelter facility there. I did ask about how long children tend to stay, and it sounds like it can range from 5 days to 8 weeks. I think aside from that, just for the women up here, and maybe it's interesting for the men too, there was a Utah Women and Leadership Project webinar today on understanding sexism in Utah. I think it was recorded. So if you get the emails from Susan Madsen, that was together with USU, kind of some fascinating and unfortunately probably too familiar findings of their discussion with women across the state. I think that was it.
Thanks, Ronnie. Kaylin.
I attended a Community Renewable Energy Agency board meeting. And in addition to the utility agreement, the communications consultant is making good progress with the whole rebranding and updating of the communications. And that includes calling it Utah Renewable Communities. And we have a new website under that name, utahrenewablecommunities.com. And you could also sign up for the same newsletter you've been able to sign up for, but they're doing a great job of reformatting all the information. So check it out. And we haven't had an official board meeting, but I've been working with the solid waste on their fee analysis and capital plan. And so at this point, it's just sort of looking at high level, just like an across the board fee increase. And we haven't gotten into the granularity of like what that might mean for city rates versus county rates and commercial versus residential and recycling and so forth. But we'll get there. Looking forward to having the city's input. That's what I've got.
Thanks, Kayla. Jason.
I don't have a whole lot. Been the budget committee for Grant County EMS, Special Service District, has been meeting about once a week for the last few weeks, working on budgets to present to the public and for next year, and it's getting really close. And that wrapped up. I didn't have too many other meetings this week. I did attend the Indigenous Peoples' Day, you know, at the city. It was very well attended. It was awesome. It was really neat to see everybody that was there, and it was great. And then I attended the debate, which was also well attended, and it was good. Everything that Luke said was right about that, and we had good attendance from the community at that. And that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Jason. I attended the Association of Governments meeting a couple weeks ago. Very interesting as always. I also met with the Office of Tourism, Utah Office of Tourism, to talk about the state's funding for the National Parks Mighty Five in the event that the government was going to shut down, which it didn't, but that doesn't mean that it won't in November. There is a meeting tomorrow with the Office of Tourism to talk about what we can expect with the eclipse coming up this weekend, and also an update on the funding that the state would provide in the event that there is a closure in November. Part of that meeting, I brought up the idea of including Hovenweep and Natural Bridges. Of course, at that time, we thought the government was going to shut down this weekend too, and we have an influx of people, and having the Park Service closed at Hovenweep and Natural Bridges was going to be a big challenge if that happened. So I advocated for them to allow funding to go to those two parks. I don't know what happened with that, but both myself and Bruce Adams from Seminole County, and one of their commissioners also, I can't remember, Jamie Harvey, I think is his name, also supported those two parks being funded. So may not be necessary in November, but because both of those parks are under the Southeast Utah group, the money is going to go, if we do need to go through this state funding process to keep the parks open, it would go through CNHA, and then CNHA would reimburse the Park Service. Just the easiest way for them to do that. So because CNHA and the Southeast Utah group also fund those all four parks, I thought it was important that we advocate for all four of our parks down here, even in San Juan County, to be open. Met with Jacques, will be meeting. I did meet with Jacques today to develop our agenda for our C4 meeting that will be happening next Wednesday. The agenda will be coming out to those of you who will participate in that tomorrow. I'll send it to you with the date and the time. Meeting with the DOE, Ronnie and I will meet with the DOE legacy management or environmental management team for the UMTRA project tomorrow. And I believe, Ronnie, you're also going over to Grand Junction on Thursday. So that is going to be an interesting meeting. One of the things we'll be talking about is transferring of the land to Grand County and Moab City, one or the other or both. Also, Kayla and I are working on the MOLO. I love that. The Moab, what is it? Moab
Lighting ordinance.
Right, Moab outdoor lighting ordinance. And so Kaylin and Kevin Walker and I are meeting to kind of look at what we want to change, so that, as you recall, several months ago, probably, gosh, it's been 8 months. Corey came to us with some changes, and Kaylin and I felt like we really wanted to review those changes to make them a little bit, we in our minds, better. And so we'll be meeting this week to discuss that. And then I'm also reinstituting the Moab Area Partnership for Seniors. We've got 8 acres left that the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District owns. As you all know, housing is a big issue. Jen and I from the hospital have been talking about housing for healthcare workers on that piece of property. So we're going to start having discussions on the development plans for the remaining 8 acres. And we'll probably be meeting quite frequently. In order to get things done, you have to keep moving it forward. And so I'd like to see us get that property developed to help support our community. And the last thing is a reminder, we have a special meeting tomorrow for the public. It's a closed meeting. And so just don't forget to be here at 4 o'clock tomorrow for that meeting. And with that, I'll ask for, oh, we don't have an executive session. That was on there just in case. So we do not have an executive session tonight, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Motion by Kalen,
Second.
second by Luke. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. I love my little gavel.